All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of Brown People Problems. This is a podcast where we chat about experiences, sometimes pleasant, sometimes a little bit difficult, in the lives of South Asian folks. And today we're talking about a really unique business venture that I've been very excited about when I first heard of it a few years ago. And I have joining me Tina Singh, who's the founder of Bold Helmets. She is an occupational therapist, a content creator. She's a mom of three. In 2023, Tina launched Bold Helmets brand, and it's actually created the first safety certified multi-sport helmet for Sikh kids who want to keep their hair. I absolutely love that, and we're going to learn more about this. She's an OT who has worked in the area of head and brain injuries, and so she knew that a helmet was essential for her kids. When she couldn't find one that fit her kids, she made her own. In 2024, she was named as one of the top 25 women of influence, as well as a recipient of Visa She's Next grant. Bold Helmets was also named as a Coralus selected venture for 2024. Welcome, Tina, and congratulations on all of your accomplishments.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. Wow, you certainly have a long roster of acknowledgments and accomplishments for something that sounds like was like a side sort of a venture and exploration. So how gratifying that must be for you.
It's interesting every time I think about it, going through the ins and outs, and we'll get into this, but being a founder, going through the ins and outs of everyday running business, sometimes you feel like, I just need a win. I'm working so hard. I just need a win. And sometimes I have to
Yeah.
stop and reminding myself, like, actually, I've had a lot of wins. And it does feel really, really nice to be recognized for work that you really did for your own kids.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's great. Yeah, tell us a little bit more about Bold Helmets and your journey. I'm trying to remember. I believe the first time I heard of Bold Helmets, it was called Sikh Helmets before, right? And
That's right.
that
Yeah.
was a few years ago. A few years ago
It was
or a
actually
couple
just
years
last
ago.
year. So it feels like a few
Really?
years ago. Yeah. So
Oh,
January 2023 is when we launched.
wow.
And
Oh,
yeah, we launched to market as Sick Helmets first originally. And I still am very, very, like, I very much like that name based on some feedback from the community and just to channel how we wanted to move forward in the future. We ended up very quickly pivoting from that name to Bold
mm,
Helmets, which has been a really great pivot for us, actually, because it has allowed us to expand what it is that we're doing in the market that we're serving. So we're really happy with that shift. But yes, we did originally launch as Sick Helmets in January 2023.
wow. Okay. Yeah, it feels like a long time. I think, you know what? That just speaks to, I think, the presence that you have had and Sikh Helmets and Bold Helmets has had because I have seen it what feels like for a long time on
Exactly.
social
So lots of
media.
people say that to me. They're like, "Oh, I remember hearing about you a few years ago." I'm like, "Oh, you mean last year?" So a lot of people say that to me. Yeah, and I think that's yeah, maybe we did so much media in the beginning, which was
Mhm.
really nice but really overwhelming. And so I think people feel like they've seen us for a long time, but really
Mhm.
we're very new.
Yeah, that's incredible. This is the helmets for Sikh kids who want to keep their hair and who are wearing a turban.
Yeah, who are wearing a patka. Yeah, so a small
Right.
cloth covering over like a top knot or a juda, not over a turban because that's a whole lot of
Right.
material, but just a small cloth covering. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I love that. I was actually talking to my partner about this the other day, and it's the narrative, and I think everyone's experience has been different, but the narrative that I kind of heard growing up, and our listeners know I was born in India, but I was raised in Canada. So I like to think I have the best of both worlds. And
Mhm.
the narrative that I have heard everywhere with whether it was sick kids on my street playing or in my school, there was just felt like there was no regard for their safety. It was like, well, you can't wear a helmet, so that's it. You figure it out. And I don't know if that was something similar that you had seen, which kind of prompted you into this, or it was something different.
So I think for me, like, so I was born and raised in Scarborough, actually, so in Canada. And I think my experience growing up, like there was sick people around me, but not so many at that time,
Mhm.
like in the 80s. But I think for me, this idea of you can't wear a helmet, I feel like it's very dismissive because you feel like there's no option, right? I think that's what it
Mm.
is. Like I don't know that if provided an option people would choose not to use it, especially a parent, right? Kids always say, oh, we don't need helmets, we don't need whatever. That's kids, that's part of childhood, right? We feel very fearless, right? And we don't worry about getting hurt. But I think as parents, I think parents are really grateful to have that kind of option, right? And when I think about myself, for me, the real driving force behind this product was for my kids. And it was not because like they were learning how to ride their bikes like a lot earlier. Like my oldest, he was 3 years old when he was on a bike without training wheels and the whole thing. So he was like ahead of the game. Like usually kids that young still have training wheels and all that kind of stuff. And so he was really quick to that kind of thing. And so when I started realizing the challenge with the helmet, I was like, here I am working like in the depths of head and brain injury in the community, doing assessments and treatments for clients in the occupational therapy space. And I was like, what do you mean? Of course you have to wear a helmet, right? Like, because
Mm.
accidents happen. We can be as careful as we want to be. Accidents happen, and we should use prevention and preventative strategies that we know are documented in the research and the literature that make a difference. And so I think for me, it wasn't so much that I feel like, oh, I'm seeing kids not using anything. For me, my experience was just my own kids. And I was like, well, if it's a problem for my own kids, it's definitely a problem for other kids.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you really saw the gap, right? When you felt the need for it, that gap really kind of came to the forefront.
Yeah, it did. And that was just, bike riding. That's when I first started thinking about this problem was when my oldest son was like 3 or 4 years old. My oldest son is turning 12.
Oh, wow.
So, this was a long time ago and a lot of thinking about it and a lot of just like every season discovering this is a problem. Then my kids started playing hockey, the older two. And I'm like, this is a problem that's not getting any better. It's getting worse and it's never going to go away. So, it wasn't until about 3 or 4 years ago, I actually kind of like took the plunge into this, but to see that gap there, I also spoke with my husband. My husband is a sardar. He wears a full dastar, a full turban, and he talked to me about baseball, and so that's how I knew. Like this was one of the stories, the inside. Like I knew that even in the '80s, there was this feeling of like there's no option for us because my husband was growing up in the '80s when the Blue Jays were going to the World Series. And it was a thing that everyone was playing baseball. And sure, he could play with his friends, but he couldn't play on a team because he didn't have a baseball
Mm,
helmet. So it's experiences like that where maybe I didn't have that lived experience, but people around me absolutely did. And so
mhm,
that was kind of one of the moments where I was like, okay, so this is not just a me issue. This is just, there just hasn't been anything. There just hasn't been an option, or it's very inconvenient to use the options available.
mhm. Well, are there other options available?
No. So I
No.
mean like a regular
Yeah.
helmet. So like if someone
Yeah.
ties their hair to the back or something, which
Right.
people can do, right? Like people can choose to tie their hair to the back. I know as a parent, when my kids are out and they're going out riding and scootering, like now that my older ones are like almost 12 and 10 years old, my youngest one's 8, they're not coming to me every second to fix their change their hair. And so we really, really saw that, especially in hockey. Like you're done your game. Like their hair was in a braid and they hated it because they
Mm,
were like, they need to like tie their hair up after they're not comfortable that way, right? So there is no other option specifically designed for sick kids. But again, I believe in helmets. And so if it means you have to tie your hair differently, that's a different story.
yeah, absolutely. I think this is, I think, part of the narrative, right? That unfortunately the onus is on the minority population to find solutions or pivot or adapt, right, to what's happening for them, to the available options.
Mhm.
And often there is an undertone of like dismissal to it, right? That it's like, okay, well, you figure it out. And it's just not something that is like wildly recognized, and it's so normalized because again, coming back to my narrative, there was always just this conversation around, well, you know what? You can't wear a helmet, so just be careful and don't fall. But that
Mhm.
just that places like a lot of onus on children to not have fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think kids have fun regardless, but I think it's the parents
Mm,
who are like, and my kids again, because I said they were on bikes really early. They actually started going to like the skateboarding park and stuff like that, and that was like when the real heart attacks started to happen. Where I was like, okay, kids, like this is getting a little bit too much, and
yeah.
strapping your helmet on top of your judah is not doing anything. It was like sitting so high, like it
Oh,
was terrible, and I would like ignore it, trying to squish that helmet down, trying to do whatever I could. We hollowed the foam out from the inside for a little while.
yeah.
I mean, hindsight is 2020. I wouldn't do that now, but I mean, then that's what we did. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Like, there was a lot of onus on us, and I think that this idea of like just the minority trying to figure out a solution to this, I like that is very true. But I also think that unless you're in it, you don't know that this is a problem. There's a lot of people who said to me, like, I had no idea that this was an issue, right? Because they don't live that life. Whereas
Mhm.
every parent of a sick child says, oh my God, I've been struggling with this forever, right? So it's a matter of perspective too, right? And so here, as diverse as Canada is, as much as we try to, bring limelight to minority issues and all those kinds of things, like, unless you're in it, You don't know.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Because some discoveries are only made, like what is it saying that mother is the invention of, no, invention is the mother of necessity, right?
Yeah.
And so,
Yep.
and things are only necessary when you have your own lived experience of it, right? I think you can conceptualize as something potentially being necessary for a group of people, but unless you're experiencing it on a day-to-day basis, it makes it very hard for you to know what's going to be needed and when it's going to be needed.
Exactly. Exactly. And I mean, I have to say that since we have launched, we've gotten a lot of like, I already mentioned like a lot of media attention, but we've got a lot of like positive feedback, people willing to partner with us, all
Mhm.
of that. So there really definitely is a push.
Yeah.
And they are recognizing the work that we're doing, which I find is like amazing. Like I feel like the
Mhm.
partnerships with people outside of even the Sikh community have been incredible. Like they've really done the work to say, okay, you did this work now. We really want to scream it from the rooftops for you, which has been really, really nice to see.
Yeah.
And I think it just goes, and even part of this coming to market with this product is other community groups saying, like, we actually have a very similar issue. And one of the things that I've realized is that we're so much alike to other minority groups
Mm.
facing very, very similar issues, right? Like we think about the people who keep their hair in dreads and everything else. So like there's a whole
Mm.
extended application to the work that we're doing outside of just even the Sikh community.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like you've created like ripple effects. I like it.
I like that. Yeah, ripple
Yeah.
effects. Because, when we look at products, when we're designing things, when we look at innovation and product design, everything we're doing is from the lens that we have. And so it's been a very like white focused lens that we've had when it comes to
Mhm.
developing sports equipment, right? And that's been kind of the story for a long time. And so I like the fact that, coming forward with this product has helped to people think different ways about things, right? Like not everything has to come from this very white traditional Canadian lens. Now we're looking at things a little bit more multiculturally, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a lot of inequity, right, in the
Hmm.
field of like
Yep.
sports and games, and that's not to say like we're not trying to villainize any particular group,
Hmm.
but there is
Yeah.
just generally there is inequity, right? And now we're in a space where there needs to be more equitable practice of sports and
Hmm.
equity and safety as
Yep.
well.
Exactly. Like we should have safety options that include people. And if we don't have them, then we're not creating equity for those groups and for all people across Canada.
No, because that's really limiting, right? Like it was limiting for your husband back in the 80s.
Exactly. And I'm sure he never said anything about it. I'm sure he did, like, you know what I mean? It's just one of those things
Mhm.
that, again, like you shared about your experience, this is just kind of how the way things are. Right. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's, um, it's sharing from your lived experience and trying to bring that to the forefront so other people know that they're not alone in that feeling. Cause I'm sure he's not the only one who felt that way in the 80s.
Gosh, yeah, exactly. And then, folks choose to cut their hair, or folks will choose to not pursue what they actually really wanted to pursue. And um, uh, that's like loss of opportunity, loss of potential, like whatever you may have. But again, it's the onus is on the minority groups to really like kind of pivot and squish yourself into these like pre-existing boxes that exist instead of creating one for our own. And that works for us.
Right, right. And I think when you talked about, people either not pursuing what they want to do, like we see that a lot, like especially in hockey, right? Like you see that. I remember last summer talking to someone from Brampton Hockey who said to me, our enrollment numbers are low, and part of the issue is the helmet. Like people are staying in until they're 9 or 10 years old, and then
Oh.
they're leaving, right? So as your hair is shorter, as you're younger, it's a little bit easier to do things differently, and then people are not staying in the sport. I mean, this was one person's perception. I don't have the data behind that to say for sure that's the case, but I know in my conversations with people, the subjective information I'm getting is that that's part of the issue.
Yeah, of course. No, and just because there's no qualitative data on this or quantitative data
Yeah.
on this, right? It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, right? They should
Yeah.
exist. It's like anecdotal information gathering is just as valuable.
Yeah.
Have you noticed any other phases of like inequity when it comes to sick kids or just like brown kids in general in sports?
Well, hockey is the big one, right? And it's
Right.
because of the helmet
Yeah.
issue, right? So that's a big one that I've seen. And that kind of just goes across to things like baseball and football and all those things, all helmet requiring sports, especially when we're talking about kids with Judas. That's like across the board.
Yeah.
And I think another limiting factor, I think, is and I could speak to like Brampton, because I'm here in Brampton. But one of the things here, I think, is we also have a lot of new Canadians, right?
Mhm.
And part of having new Canadians is like the cost involved with things like joining hockey and all these extracurricular activities is
Yeah.
significant. Um, and so, like, if you go to a basketball gym, usually those are full, right? But if you go to hockey arenas here, you can get on the team here because it's much more expensive to get involved in those types of sports. So I think when it comes to inequity, it's really just like we have a lot of newcomers in this city specifically, and in lots of parts of Canada. And so just the financial ability to be able to engage in that. Like I
Yeah.
think about my parents. My parents came here like in the 70s, right? And so for them, it's like they were focused on building their life and their career here, which is what
Absolutely.
these newcomers are doing as well. And so their kids are not having as much access to sports and things like that. That being said, I do think there has been a push to create programs to allow kids to get involved in these kind of activities, some subsidized activities, so that they can be involved in things that are such a big part of Canadian culture.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that. I don't have any children, so
Mhm.
this is a total blind spot for me. The other
Mhm.
day, my husband and I were driving and we saw this, I think it was somewhere in Brampton, we saw a sign for after school tuitions and robotics. And,
Yeah.
sort of laughing. They were like, okay, now like the trend is shifting. Now it's not just like math anymore.
Yeah.
Now it's like you're
Yeah.
going to tuitions for like robotic and coding. So I think we have so many like blind spots that even around kids wanting to get into hockey and whatnot. I didn't even think about what you just said, that you are only able to do it until when it's convenient and it's
Yeah.
feasible. And then when it starts to get harder, that's when you drop out and you don't pursue something.
Yeah, like I'm thinking, like, again, this is anecdotal. I don't have like the qualitative data behind this, but I'm thinking about, like, I have three nephews that play hockey, and going to their games, like we've gone to a handful of their games, and they're like even play like rep hockey and stuff. I don't think that there's a single kid with a judo on their teams. Like I
Mm,
don't, not one. And this is Brampton.
yeah,
So again, it could be that they were not of interest, but I don't think there's a single kid with judo. And I think part of the problem is the helmet.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm curious. We're both healthcare professionals, and
Hmm.
entrepreneurship is obviously just like not something that we're taught uh, in an academic setting unless it's something that we've experienced within our families. So I am also curious, how's it been like for you to kind of navigate entrepreneurship and a success, launching something so successful, coming from the sort of, very like linear, what I imagine is like linear healthcare approach.
Well, I'll say this. When I was in school for OT many moons ago, I knew that I wasn't going to stay in a direct client treatment role. I know some people, they go to school and they're like, I'm going to work in
Mm.
pediatrics and I'm going to work in the school board and whatever. They know exactly what they want to do. I knew that I was either going to go to an administrative role eventually, or I'm going to run my own business, or what I'm going to do. So I knew that, because that's just who I am. So all the opportunities I had to do different fieldwork placements were like at the OT college, or at, I picked those kind of placements, right? So I did do direct treatment, and I
Yeah.
spent a lot of my career doing direct treatment actually. But I knew that I wanted to do something more in the administrative or business space. And so um, I went in with that attitude. So right after I graduated, I worked for someone else and did assessments and treatments in the community, and very quickly just became freelance and started doing my own. And that was right from the beginning. I do recommend people, like if you're a healthcare worker, do spend a year like in a hospital or clinic. Like it's
Oh,
really
yeah.
important for developing those skills. However, after that, I was just on my own and doing more on, on the freelance side, right? Like just working contract, doing what worked for me,
Mm,
getting my own referrals and stuff like that. So it's just like running your own business. So I have experience running my own business in that
mhm,
respect. It is very different than running a business now, which is a product based business. I'm
mhm,
now like non-clinical. I'm still like designing products is still part of the OT role when it comes to accessibility. So I'm still in that space and using that OT lens, but I'm like very heavily in the business side and building a business side of
mhm,
things. And so I think part of my experience growing up. So my dad is an entrepreneur. My dad is like a Petro-Canada retailer and is like very successful at his career. And so I kind of grew up with him like running his
mhm.
own business. So I have that experience, and I think it's kind of in my blood. Like my sister is an amazing entrepreneur as well, right? My sister Lily Singh, she's an incredible entrepreneur. So like I
Oh,
feel like the entrepreneurship is kind of
mm,
in our blood. And I think, I mean, you'd have to ask her, but I think that she would agree, like kind of seeing that vision of entrepreneurship is like you see it. And so my mom and dad work together even to this very day in their
mm.
business together. And I think that I really do think some people just have it in their blood. And I think I'm one of those people. So even though it's hard and I don't think I'm doing everything perfectly, I love what I do. And I know that there's a lot of people who can't say that. I love what I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. No, that truly is a blessing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think brown people in general, we are so entrepreneurial.
Yep.
So entrepreneurial, right?
You
Um,
know what? It's the people. And I think part of that is the immigration. Part of that is going to a new
mm,
country, trying to find your own way, realizing if I work this 9 to 5, yes, I can survive, but I won't get to the goals that I want to get to. And so what else can I do? And so I don't know, brown people are hustling, right? We are
yeah.
hustling for like the minute they come to a new country. And that's
Yeah.
not all people, right? We're not saying everyone, but I
Mhm.
think a lot of them. I think South Asians have great entrepreneurial spirit. I think you're right.
Absolutely. I even think about, like back on the subcontinent, I grew up in India and there was somebody to do any service and every service, right? And these are
Yep.
folks that are identifying that, okay, there is a gap here. So you do need somebody to iron your clothes. All right, like that's going to be me, right? These are not multi-million dollar corporations that are employing out people. So
Yep.
we have this knack for identifying where the gaps are and jumping on that. Yeah, maybe as a culture, I think we can dismiss some levels of entrepreneurship and value those at another level, but
Mhm.
the spirit of entrepreneurship is there.
It's there because they're not employees. They're creating their own work and their own income,
Exactly.
right? So that's entrepreneurial.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I asked that because I asked that question because it's not something that, most of us are taught. It has to be a lived experience, right? I actually come from a family where everyone's very much like a straight academic
Hmm.
and no entrepreneurs at all. So for me to do this, I run my own practice as well. So
Hmm.
I'm an entrepreneur in that sense. And that was just such a journey to realize all different faces and parts of running a
Yep.
business. And
Yep.
like you said, you're now in a product-based business, which is a totally different ballgame than a
It's
service-based
totally different.
business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's totally different. So much learning in a product based business because it's not just me. Before, as an occupational therapist, I'm using my services, I'm selling my services, right?
Mhm.
Whereas now it's like there's a whole thing outside of me that I have to account for. And, you need to put a lot of money into a product
Mm.
before it comes to market rate. It's really different than running a service-based business, which is still really hard.
Yeah.
But it's just a completely different ballgame.
It's completely ballgame. Yeah, my partner has a product-based business. So yeah, it is very hard, but it must be so gratifying to see folks, buy. Where have you, besides your family, have you seen folks kind of just like wear the helmets in the
Yeah.
community?
So yeah, so actually I have people send in photos all the time. Like people send me
Mm,
pictures all the time of their
right.
kids or whatever, like in a sport or whatever they're doing with the
Yeah.
helmets on. So that's part of it. I'll have friends like call me or send me a message or WhatsApp and be like, I just saw a kid down the street wearing a polo helmet. So like
Ah.
that's really, really, really nice to see. We're still early in the game, right? Like really, we're just a year in. So we're still early in the game, but just even like we very recently partnered with Suso Skate Park, which is like a roller skating, like indoor roller skating kind
Okay.
of setup. And it's currently at Bramley City Center, so I'm in
Oh,
Brampton, but they change locations all the time. We recently partnered with them, so they purchased some of our helmets. We went in there, whatever. So now, one of the really gratifying things for me is that I know when a parent walks in there, they're not going to have to tell their kid that they can't do something because helmets are mandatory under the age of 13 for their, I think, for them.
mm,
So to participate in that roller rink and like also like if your kid gets invited to a birthday party there, I know that they're going to have an option, right? So I think that's the most gratifying. Like when I hear that they're available there,
mm,
people will eventually find out that they're there, right?
yeah.
There'll be a kid who shows up there who's like, "Oh my god, I can't believe you have an option for me." You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's going to happen and I'm really excited for that.
Yeah. No, this is like I think the true definition of inclusivity, right? This is
Yeah.
creating
And
inclusivity in the sports space.
yeah, and just oh god, I'm going to share a personal story. Can I share a personal story?
Absolutely, if you're comfortable, yeah.
So, my oldest son, I mentioned he's about to turn 12. He, like a couple years ago, or quite a few years ago, he had a rock climbing company kind of come into his school, and they were doing a bunch of different things, rock climbing and a few other things. And I remember seeing it set up in the gym. I went into the school for something, seeing it set up in the gym. I'm like, oh, that's going to be a lot of fun. I kid you not, so many years have gone by. Like a month ago, we were driving past an indoor rock climbing place on the way to somewhere. And I said to him, oh, Joda, do you remember that time you had a rock climbing wall at your school? And he's like, yeah, I wasn't allowed to do it because he didn't have a helmet. So I had no idea because I had never asked, like maybe I'd asked, maybe I forgot. I don't know. This
Yeah.
was very recent. He's like, yeah, I wasn't allowed to do it because I didn't have a helmet. In my head, I was like, oh my God. So there's different certifications for helmets for every
Mm.
sport. So that's another challenge of running a product-based business in this space. But
Mm.
that was just one of the things I'm like, oh my God, I'm still hearing about all these things. Like, can you imagine telling a grade 1 kid or kindergarten kid, well, I'm sorry, there's no helmet for you. You can do the other stuff, but you can't do this. Who doesn't want to do the rock climbing wall? Right. Like,
Yeah.
so I'm trying to avoid that situation. I don't want that to
Yeah.
happen to other kids. Right. So
Yeah.
that's going to be the rewarding part for me. A kid's get invited to a birthday party somewhere. They don't have to think twice about it. They probably will because they don't know what's there yet. But
Yeah.
when they do realize it, they'll be like, oh my God, there's an option for me. Right.
Absolutely right. It creates choice.
And belonging. They
Yeah.
feel included. Yeah, it's really
Absolutely.
important. It's more than we know. Like we all remember those times in our childhood where we were excluded for something or felt like we didn't fit in. We all
Mhm.
remember those times, right? They become like memories that kind of come back to us every so often when it happens again and again.
Yeah.
Like I get overwhelmed when I think about stuff like that. I'm just like, I don't want
Yeah.
that to happen to my kids. I don't want that to happen to anyone's kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they become core memories,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, you're creating so much choice and inclusivity that now, you kids have a choice to say, you know what, I don't want to, versus walking away from something because they can't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Which makes me wonder, was creating like larger kind of social change that you really seem to have created, was that always the intention, or was this more of a, I need to meet my children's needs?
So I'll say this: when I started, like when I first thought of this idea, I wanted to just solve my children's
Mm.
issues. When I actually took the opportunity to sign on that dotted line after waiting years and years with a design engineer saying that I want you to make a CAD file of what it is that I'm thinking of, or design file for what it is I'm thinking of. When I did that, I knew that I was all in. I knew that I was either going to get to the end of creating a product that worked, or I was going to run out of money trying. That's the truth. So
Mm.
once I signed there, I knew it was beyond just what my kids needed,
Mm.
right? Um, in terms of creating larger social change, like I never in a million years would have guessed that would have gotten the traction that we did when we first launched. I knew I have a big social media following that's engaged. I knew that they would support my product. I knew that people would share my stuff. I knew we'd get some traction, but the amount of traditional media that kind of shared our work, came to interview us, like did stories on us. Like I think I did every like news network in Canada, like and other parts of the world. It seemed like we
Mm.
were everywhere. I was not expecting that at all, especially for a product that's so niche,
Mm.
specific to my community, right? And so, yeah, I wasn't expecting that at all. So I wasn't expecting to make any kind of societal change, to be honest. I was hoping that parents of kids with Judas would be like, oh, here's an option for me. Great, I've got this. I wasn't expecting,
Mm.
organizations to be saying, we need this product. So when they come to us, that we have it. Like I wasn't expecting any of this, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And that makes it that much more sweet, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, it raises the pressure level like a lot, but like,
I can
yeah,
imagine.
it makes it gratifying to know that other people do seemingly care that this has been an issue, and that's really nice because we are a minority group, right? And
Yeah,
it's very clear that the larger community cares about this, which I think is really important and really nice to see.
absolutely. Yeah, and Punjabi people were everywhere, right? In every
Yeah,
corner of the world. So there
yeah,
is that need everywhere, right? Yeah, some people call us like the marginalized majority, right? But the inequity and
mhm,
the marginalization, the systemic marginalization still exists.
yep,
So, and that's what you're really trying to undo here or create a change for. And I love that. Yeah. But you're right, it does raise the pressure, right? Like with anything, I think when there's more eyes on your stuff, it creates all this like imposter syndrome, all these anxieties that we,
yep.
didn't think were going to be there.
One of the greatest things that I'm happy that I did was I started therapy like right after like this,
Amazing.
and I should have done it years ago. I've done it on and off for years, but like I have like a standing appointment with
Amazing.
my therapist, and I see them virtually, which makes things so much
Yeah.
easier. But yeah, that's part of it. It's like the imposter syndrome, with anything that you go live with, you're gonna have people who love it, you're gonna have people who hate it. And usually the people who hate it is like few and far between, but usually they're the loudest ones. And so in our minds, they're also the loudest ones. And so I think the imposter syndrome, the dealing with that and feeling like, oh my God, everyone hates me, everyone hates, like, all that feeling that I had right in the beginning, like I really needed to work through that. And I think I've like really come a long way in a year. And so if I could give anyone any advice who's trying to take on any venture, like get yourself a solid therapist because
Yeah.
those feelings are going to come up no matter how hard you try or how well you think you're doing. So it's
Absolutely.
good to have someone that you can lean on in those times.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really appreciate Then I'm happy that that's been created a positive change for you, right? Because it's very much part of our human nature to have the marker for progress and the marker for success constantly move out of our reach, right? So we're like, okay, well,
Yeah.
I'll be happy when this happens, or I'll be happy when that happens. But that thing happens, but that comes with like a lot of new stress and anxieties, and this no longer makes us happy. So this like marker keeps moving, and imposter syndrome is very good at keeping us doubting
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yeah. It absolutely is. Yeah. I feel like the imposter syndrome part of it, I still feel it today as much as I try, but I use my strategies to, remember where I'm at, know what I know for
Mm.
sure in this moment, and stay very mindful and present in the moment that I'm in. Because I feel like it's very easy to spiral, like, for lack of a better word, right? From where you're at. And so, anytime, like, even when you're reading my intro and you're like, oh, yeah, she's been awarded this year, I was like, oh my God, no, because it raises the level of pressure that you
Yeah.
have on yourself,
Yeah.
and the pressure to succeed at something that you're really new at, right? And so
Yeah.
yeah, it all comes together. It's a package deal.
Yeah, it does. You're absolutely right. You can't have one without the other. You can't have success without self-doubt and imposter syndrome.
Yep.
Unfortunately, yeah. But it's part of the growth, right? As long
Yep.
as it feels manageable. But yeah, it seems like you've had some really lovely response from the community, from the Desi Punjabi community, but also just from like the general Eurocentric communities. That's been very rewarding.
Mhm.
And it's being adapted into so many other cultures. Like that's great.
Yeah, I'm very happy with the where we are now. We're always looking for forward growth. I mean, there's a lot coming down the pipeline for Bold Helmets as well. So we are continuing to work and we're continuing to innovate and do all those things. We're also trying to remain mindful and happy with how far we've come.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you've really fulfilled a gap, right? And that's certainly something to be proud of. Even if it makes a difference in 10 people's lives or 1,000 people's lives, it's still change, right? And then we
Yeah.
think about the change that comes from one person's life that we've changed. And there's just so many unending ripples here. So that's really great. Are you able to share a little bit more about what's coming up for Bold Helmets, or is that something that's more in the wraps?
No, I can share a little
Oh.
bit. So we have so last year in our first launch, we launched our size small product. Just last month, not last month, in February, we launched our size medium product, so like slightly bigger sizing.
Mm.
And just like as a little bit of background information, anytime you create a product in the safety space, like a helmet, for example, we release a size small and people are like, oh, we really need a size medium. That's great. But it costs like the same amount of money to recreate that product because it's all new molding, all new testing. It doesn't matter if it's the same thing, it's just sized up. It has to be all redone. And so it's a very expensive kind of
Mm.
long process that it takes to get to it. So even though it seems like, oh, we just have a new size, it's actually a major accomplishment on the back end. So did the size small last year, size medium earlier this year. This year, we are very heavily in the kind of the process of bringing a hockey version to market. So we're
Mm.
hoping that that's going to happen this year. That's projected for this year. We don't know how things are going to go, but we are projecting for this year. And so that's like a really exciting part of what we're
Yeah.
doing. That's we're hoping to bring forward soon.
Yeah.
And another really exciting thing that we have coming down the pipeline for this season, you might already know this, but Canadian Tire regionally here in Brampton will be carrying our product. So we have 4 locations here in Brampton of Canadian Tire. They'll all carry our product this season. We also have 2 locations in Surrey as well. So you can visit our website to see which locations they are. But this way, customers can go in, they can try and see our product, purchase, try before they buy, essentially, which people want to be able to do with helmets at those locations. So we're really excited about that. Canadian Tire is a great partner for us and where we're
Yeah.
strategically heading. So we can't wait to see how the community responds to that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Congratulations. That's a huge feat.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that's lovely. So it can folks expect maybe adult sizing as well at some point in the future?
So right now, the size small is a kid's size. The size medium is technically actually an adult size. So
Okay.
56 to 59 centimeters technically falls in the adult size category. And head size is really like particular. There might be some like 7 or 8 year olds who take a size medium, and there might be some like 11-year-olds who use a size small. Like my oldest son can use this size small still. He's just only now starting to sort of size up.
Yeah.
So it really depends. But technically, our medium is an adult size. We don't have plans to expand further beyond that right now because we're very heavily involved in like hockey at the moment.
Okay.
There could be a size large that comes in the future. I can't speak to it yet though.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Because
Mhm.
I imagine, really, like you said, it's such an accomplishment on the back end to just go upsizing. So it requires a lot of work.
Yeah, a lot of work and a lot of
Yeah.
money actually to get to
Yeah.
like to increase the product offering.
Yeah, what doesn't, right?
Yeah.
Do you have a big team that you work with?
So it's actually just myself, and then I have my husband who consults for us as well. Like he is very heavily involved, but he also has a full-time job,
Yeah.
so he does what he can when he's available. And he's a computer engineer, and he
Right.
knows his stuff, and he's really great at operations. So he does a lot of great work for us, but just when he's around.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's me. I do have a couple of contracts that we do have, things like email marketer or social media stuff like that. That we do have some help that way, but in terms of employees and teams, like that's like the extent of our team. We have a
Yeah.
logistics company that fulfills and ships our orders for us, stuff
Mhm.
like that. But otherwise, it's a very small but mighty
Yeah,
kind
I
of
love
group.
it. I
Yeah,
love it. Yeah. And in a sense with your husband involved, right? It's like a bit of a family business, which is great.
it is. Oh yeah, my kids helped like pack and ship all of our first orders after our pre-order last
I love
January.
it.
So yeah, that was before we had a logistics company. So we packed, like hand packed and shipped,
Yeah.
labeled all those boxes, like the first, like
Yeah.
I don't know, whatever it was, like the first few hundred orders all went packed by us.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. I've done something similar for my husband a few years ago when he was
Yeah.
first starting his. It's like, okay, let's put these boxes together. I love
Yeah.
it. It's so great.
Yeah.
And I think it's your kids too, right? That are modeling the helmets on your website.
Yeah, yeah. So my three
Yeah.
kids are models on the website.
I
We're
love
going
it.
to expand it to more people. Like I want to, like I've been a content creator for so long. I also try to be mindful of like my kids' privacy as well. So we're going to
Right.
see how they feel about modeling this season. If not, we'll get other people, but we want to be respectful of the kids too, right? Like we don't know that they always want to be modeling or whatever. So we try to be cognizant of that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Oh, it's so exciting to see people do all sorts of cool stuff. I just find it so exciting. And I'm so glad that you took out time for this conversation today.
Oh, thank you. No, it's really great. It's nice to take a step back from the other things that I'm doing, like the grind of all the things, to actually talk to
Yeah.
other people. Entrepreneurship is a
Yeah.
really lonely place. And I feel like sometimes you're just doing all the things alone, sometimes in your
Yeah.
basement, sometimes,
Yeah.
in a closet, in like in a corner of your house. So it's
Yeah.
nice to like talk to other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And because you've been in the freelancing space for so long, you know what it's like to work in a silo,
Yeah.
right? It's just very lonely. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
nice to connect. Oh, I'm so happy that you came online for this. If you're listening and you'd like to check out both helmets, obviously all of Tina's links will be in the description box. Let us know your thoughts. If you're listening to us on Spotify, there's a Q&A section. And if you're on YouTube, obviously the comment section is for your exploration. So go ahead and check that out. Thanks so much for being here, Tina, today. Any parting words of advice that you would like to give to other budding entrepreneurs listening?
Get yourself a good therapist. That's my first one. The other thing is build a community of support around you. I think that's been really, really pivotal, like for me, or like essential for me, is finding other entrepreneurs in a similar space, even if they're not in a similar space. If they're in a similar stage of their journey, I find we're all kind of dealing with very, very similar things. So
Mm.
find your community of support. And remember to celebrate your wins. I'm not good at that. Remember to celebrate your wins. So those are the three things I would say to any budding entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and I back those. Those are incredible. Yeah, celebrating the wins is such a big one for me too, because again, we're always running after the next and the next and the next accomplishment.
Always.
Always. Yeah. All right, folks, thanks for joining us today. Stay tuned for our disclaimer. The guest and the host of Brown People Problems do not offer individualized therapeutic or medical advice, and our conversations should not be interpreted as such. This podcast is not a replacement for therapy. This podcast exists for educational purposes only. Please consider your circumstances and engage with the content mindfully.